Major Maude Radford Warren, writer, traveler, soldier, died July 6, 1934. The identifying information on this gravestone is so intriguing. How did a woman serve as a soldier and attain the rank of major well before World War II greatly expanded women's military participation? Maude Lavinia Radford Warren, born 1875, died in 1934, was a successful journalist when World War I began in Europe in 1914. The Canadian-born writer was trained in literature and composition at the University of Chicago. She also taught those subjects at the University of Chicago for more than 10 years. Warren's first article had been accepted for publication in about 1901. She was a prolific writer and contributed nonfiction articles, short stories, and serialized novellas to the Saturday Evening Post, the New York Times, Harper's Magazine, Collier's, and the Ladies' Home Journal, among others. Warren regularly traveled to Europe to report on political and social issues. Her 1916 passport application included a letter from her publisher vouching for her credentials as a, quote, writer of standing who has contributed frequently to Harper's Magazine and other periodicals of the highest class. The Saturday Evening Post hired Warren as one of a group of 4 women writers to cover the war in Europe. Warren also volunteered as a YMCA mobile canteen worker in France with the American Expeditionary Forces. Warren's YMCA work took her, quote, almost within sight of the firing line at several battles in France, where she was once reported to have arrived, quote, on the heels of the American and French troops as they chased the Germans out. Many of her articles focused on the human toll of the war on soldiers and civilians. More than 3,000 American women volunteered in Europe as YMCA canteen workers during the First World War. The YMCA mobile canteens provided a home away from home for American soldiers. The canteen workers set up their huts wherever the soldiers were, and often near the front lines of battle. They organized supply trains across war-ravaged roads to provide hot meals, hot chocolate and lemonade, and cookies, chocolates, and other treats to boost soldiers' morale. Like other YMCA volunteers, Warren had received nursing training and provided basic medical aid for wounded soldiers. The Kansas City Kansan newspaper reported a story about Warren's YMCA work on the French front. Quote, the 353rd Ambulance Company's dressing station was at a village taken by the Kansas Infantry. The ambulances were hauling wounded into the dressing station, and there they were receiving the necessary first aid and attention. Mrs. Warren used an old fireplace to make hot chocolate and had a good store of cookies and wafers with some jam. She looked after every wounded Yank carefully, and if he was at all able, he was internally scalded with hot chocolate, for he needed the warmth and preparing for what might be anything from a few hours to 24 hours ride through the mist and rain to a field hospital. Finally, early in the morning, when the number of incoming wounded fell off almost to nothing, Mrs. Warren decided she would rest. She found a stretcher, a couple of blankets, and crawled beneath. Towards daylight, 2 stretcher bearers had Mrs. Warren halfway out of the building to a waiting ambulance before it was discovered she was not a wounded soldier. It was Warren's YMCA work that earned her the rank of major, for her, quote, excellent work among our men and for the wounded at the front during violent bombardment, and her heroic and soldier-like conduct under fire. Warren received an honorary commission as a major in the 117th Field Signal Battalion of the Rainbow Division. Warren was one of only 4 women to receive such a citation from a divisional commander. Reportedly, she held the record for the most rapid promotion in the entire American Expeditionary Forces. After the war, Warren continued her work as a foreign correspondent in the Near East. In the 1920s, she devoted her time to writing fiction. Her bestseller, The House of Youth, was published in 1923. The story deals with the aftermath of World War I among a group of privileged young people. It was made into a motion picture in 1924. Two other silent film melodramas were produced based on Warren's writing, 1913's Young Love and The Road Through the Dark in 1918. The Road Through the Dark was based on Warren's short story about a young woman in peril after the German invasion of France. Warren had moved to Ithaca in 1916 to be near her close friend, colleague, and co-writer Harriet Crandall Davenport, born 1871. Davenport died in 1922, and Warren helped raise Harriet's two sons. Warren died at her home in Cayuga Heights on July 6, 1934, at age 59. In her will, she requested burial at Pleasant Grove Cemetery, next to her best friend Harriet's grave. Warren lived an adventurous and trailblazing life. She wasn't an enlisted soldier, but her work anticipated the roles women would serve under fire during later foreign wars. Warren's books have faded in popularity over the decades since her death, but her achievements during World War I continue to be marked with a gravesite American flag placed during Memorial Day and Veterans Day commemorations held in cemeteries throughout Ithaca and Tompkins County.